The diplomatic halls of Centrum Prime buzzed with conversations in dozens of alien languages. David Reed adjusted his formal Earth uniform one last time before stepping through the massive crystalline doors. Behind him, Dr. Emma Stone carried her archaeological equipment case, while Captain Tom Miller kept his hand close to his sidearm out of habit. The three humans had traveled farther from Earth than any before them. Their ship, the Perseverance, sat in the orbital docks above this alien world that served as the capital of something called the Galactic Confederation. For months, Earth had received their signals offering membership to what they called the young species of the third spiral arm. The central chamber opened before them like a cathedral made of living light. Hundreds of beings from across the galaxy filled the space. Some walked on legs like humans, others floated in energy fields, and a few existed as pure crystalline forms that sang when they moved. At the center of it all sat three figures on raised platforms, clearly the leaders of this vast organization. "Welcome, humans of Earth," spoke the middle figure. His voice carried the weight of authority, though his blue-scaled skin and 4 arms made him look nothing like any Earth creature. "I am Consul Thane of the Altarian Republic. We have been waiting to meet the newest children of the galaxy." To his left sat what appeared to be a living crystal formation, shifting colors as it communicated through harmonic vibrations that the translation devices converted to words. "I am Elder Lux of the Crystal Worlds. Your species shows promise, though you are still very young in the ways of space." The third leader resembled a massive octopus, but with skin that changed patterns like a living computer screen. "And I am Prime Vel of the Archive Worlds. We have prepared suitable roles for your people in our confederation." David stepped forward and bowed slightly, as the diplomatic protocols suggested. "Thank you for this opportunity. Earth is honored to be considered for membership in your organization." Consul Thane's expression seemed amused, though reading alien, faces proved difficult. "Considered? Oh, young human, we have already decided. Your species will join us as junior members, of course. It will take centuries before you develop enough to contribute meaningfully to our civilization." The words stung, but David maintained his diplomatic composure. "We appreciate your generosity. Perhaps you could tell us more about this confederation?" Elder. Lux sang a complex harmony that translated as laughter. "Certainly, newcomer. Our confederation spans 47 different species across thousands of worlds. Some of us have maintained interstellar civilization for over 50,000 years. The Altarians have ruled star systems since before your world learned to make fire." Prime Vel's skin displayed what looked like a timeline with countless alien symbols. "The archive holds records of galactic history going back 100,000 years. We have seen species rise and fall, witnessed wars that shaped entire sectors of space, and preserved knowledge that predates your solar system's formation." Captain Miller couldn't help himself. "Our solar system is over 4 billion years old." The alien leaders exchanged what might have been glances. Consul Thane spoke, with the patience of an adult explaining something simple to a child. "We speak of civilization, young captain. Your species has existed for perhaps 200,000 years, but you only reached space travel within the last century. You are infants in the grand scheme of galactic development." Dr. Stone had remained quiet during the exchange, but David noticed she was studying the decorative panels around the chamber walls. Ancient symbols covered the surfaces, and she seemed to recognize something in their patterns. "These symbols," she said suddenly, pointing to a section of the wall. "Where did they come from?" Prime Vel's display skin shifted to show pride. "Ah, you notice our most precious artifacts. These are reproductions of the unknown precursor writings. We have found similar symbols on dozens of worlds throughout the galaxy, but their creators vanished long before any of our civilizations developed writing." "Vanished?" Emma asked, her voice carrying a strange tone. "Completely," Elder Lux sang. They left behind only fragments, tools, buildings, and these symbols carved into stone. Our greatest archaeologists have spent millennia trying to understand their language, but it remains a mystery. They must have been incredibly advanced, possibly the first true galactic civilization. Consul Thane gestured toward a display case at the side of the chamber. We have actual artifacts from these precursors in our museum. Perhaps later you would like to see them. Consider it part of your education about the galaxy you are joining. David noticed Dr. Stone's knuckles had turned white as she gripped her equipment case. That would be very interesting, she managed to say. Excellent, Thane continued. But first, let us discuss your place in our confederation. Earth will be granted provisional membership with limited voting rights. Your people will be assigned to mining colonies in the Outer Rim, where they can learn proper galactic civilization. In time, perhaps a few centuries, you may earn greater responsibilities. The condescension in his voice was unmistakable now. Captain Miller's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Your technology is primitive but serviceable for basic labor, Prime Vel added. Your weapons are crude, your ships barely capable of interstellar travel. But every species starts somewhere. Elder Lux's song carried notes of what sounded like sympathy. Do not be discouraged. The Zephyrians also started as a primitive species, 40,000 years ago. Now they are valued members of our confederation, though still in junior positions. The meeting continued for another hour, with the alien leaders outlining humanity's expected role as the newest and least developed member of their ancient alliance. They spoke of quotas for raw materials, assigned sectors for human colonization, and the gradual process by which Earth might eventually earn respect among the older civilizations. Throughout it all, Dr. Stone remained unusually quiet, studying every symbol and artifact visible in the chamber. When the formal session ended and they were escorted to their guest quarters, she was the first to speak. We need to contact Earth immediately, she said, her voice urgent. Why? David asked. The negotiations went as expected. They're arrogant, but the membership offer is real. Emma turned to face both men, her expression serious. Because I've seen those symbols before, not in any alien archive or precursor site. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle. I've seen them in caves on Earth, in Turkey and Peru, and carved into rocks in Antarctica. Some of them are over 50,000 years old. Captain Miller frowned. That's impossible. Those symbols are supposedly from an unknown galactic civilization. Dr. Stone shook her head slowly. That's just it, Tom. I don't think they're unknown, at all. I think we're looking at humanity's own forgotten history. The Great Museum of Centrum Prime stretched for kilometers underground, carved into the living rock of the planet itself. Prime Vel led the human delegation through corridors lined with the treasures of 100 civilizations. His skin displayed pride as he showed off artifacts from species that had ruled the galaxy when Earth was still covered in ice. Here we have the crown jewels of the Methane dynasty, Vel announced, his patterns shifting to highlight a case filled with crystalline structures. They controlled 14 star systems for 8,000 years before their sun went nova. Dr. Stone nodded politely, but her attention kept drifting to the walls themselves. Between the display cases, ancient symbols were carved directly into the stone. The same symbols she had seen in the diplomatic chamber. The same symbols she had spent years studying in caves back on Earth. Captain Miller walked beside her, pretending to admire the exhibits while actually mapping the museum's layout on his wrist computer. Old military habits died hard, and something about this whole situation felt wrong to him. And this, Vel continued, stopping before a massive archway, is our most mysterious collection, the Precursor Hall. They entered a circular chamber with a domed ceiling that sparkled with embedded lights like stars. Display cases lined the walls, each containing artifacts that seemed impossibly old, tools made from materials that didn't. appear on any periodic table, stone tablets covered in mathematical formulas, and everywhere those same symbols. We estimate these artifacts to be between 40 and 60,000 years old, Vel explained, his skin showing what might have been. Reverence, found on 37 different worlds across the galaxy, always in the same pattern. Evidence of advanced civilization, then nothing. Complete disappearance. Emma approached the nearest case, her heart racing. Inside lay a stone tablet covered. In geometric patterns and symbol sequences, she recognized them immediately. The same mathematical progression carved into the walls of Göbekli Tepe. The same geometric relationships found in the caves of Lascaux. The symbols, she said carefully. Have you made any progress translating them? Vel's patterns shifted to show frustration. Centuries of effort by our best linguists. We know they represent some form of mathematics and possibly star charts, but the base language remains completely alien to us. Emma pulled out her tablet computer and opened a file. What about this sequence? She showed Vel a photograph from Earth, symbols carved into a cave wall in Turkey. Vel's entire body went rigid, his skin cycling through rapid color changes. Where did you get this? It's from our homeworld, Emma replied. We found similar carvings in dozens of locations. Impossible, Vel whispered. These are precursor symbols. Your world is in the outer rim, far from any known precursor sites. Captain Miller stepped closer. How far are the known sites from Earth? Vel's skin displayed a star map showing dots of light scattered across the galaxy. The closest is over 200 light-years from your system. The pattern suggests they expanded outward from the galactic core but never reached the outer spiral arms. Emma studied the map carefully. To her eyes, the pattern looked different. Not an expansion from the core, but something else entirely. Could I see a more detailed version of this map? Certainly, Vel said, still clearly shaken by the Earth photographs. But first, tell me more about these caves on your world. When were they created? Carbon dating puts the oldest at around 50,000 years, Emma replied. But here's the interesting part. They're not clustered in one region. We found them on every continent, even Antarctica. Vel's skin went completely white, a color they hadn't seen before. 50,000 years? That's impossible. No species in the Outer Rim had developed advanced civilization 50,000 years ago. Maybe the Outer Rim isn't where civilization started, Captain Miller suggested. Before Vel could respond, a chime echoed through the museum. Closing time, he announced, though his skin patterns suggested deep disturbance. We should return to the surface. As they made their way back through the corridors, David noticed something odd. Several display cases near the precursor artifacts were empty, with small placards reading, "Removed for study." When he asked about them, Vel's patterns became evasive. Some artifacts require special analysis, he said quickly. Not suitable for public display. That evening, in their guest quarters, the three humans held a private meeting. Emma had spent the day photographing every symbol she could find, while Tom had mapped the museum and noted the security arrangements. I contacted Earth while you were at the museum, David announced. I asked for complete archaeological files from every major dig site containing similar symbols. Emma's eyes lit up. What did they send? David activated a holographic display that filled their small room with data. Site maps, carbon dating results, symbol translations, and most importantly, a comprehensive map showing the locations of every known ancient human site containing the mysterious symbols. Emma stared at the Earth map for a long moment, then called up Vel's star chart of precursor sites. She overlaid the two maps, adjusting for scale and galactic positioning. The pattern was unmistakable. Look at this, she said excitedly. If you trace lines outward from Earth through all our ancient sites, they point directly toward the known. Precursor worlds. Tom studied the projection. It's like a expansion route, starting from Earth and spreading outward through the galaxy. But that would mean, David started, then stopped as the implications hit him. It would mean humans were the precursors, Emma finished. 50,000 years ago, humanity wasn't stuck on Earth. We were spread across the galaxy. Captain Miller pulled up more data on his computer. There's something else. I've been analyzing the Confederation's historical records. They have detailed histories going back 30,000 years, but before that, it's fragmentary. Almost like something major happened that disrupted their record-keeping. Emma nodded slowly. A catastrophe. Something that forced humanity to abandon the galaxy and retreat to Earth. The colonists left behind survived but forgot their origins over the millennia. That's a pretty big leap, David said, though his voice suggested he was beginning to believe it. Emma pulled up more files. From Earth. Look at this. Genetic studies of ancient human remains from our oldest sites. They show much greater diversity than we see in modern humans, almost like our population went through a severe bottleneck around 50,000 years ago. A bottleneck, Tom repeated. Like most of humanity left Earth, and only a small population remained behind. Or returned, Emma corrected. Maybe the catastrophe forced the galactic colonies to send their populations back to the origin world for safety. David sat in silence for several minutes, processing the information. Finally, he spoke. If this is true, if humanity really was the precursor civilization, then every species in this confederation are our descendants, Emma finished. Humans who were stranded on different worlds, who adapted and evolved and forgot where they came from. Tom looked at the star maps still hovering in the room. Vel mentioned that some precursor sites are sealed off, not open to the public. If we could get access to one of those sites, we could prove it, Emma said. But they'd never give us permission. Not while they think we're just primitive newcomers. David smiled grimly. Then we'll have to find another way. Because if humanity really is the parent species of this entire confederation, it's time our children learned the truth about where they came from. Outside their window, the lights of Centrum Prime sparkled in the darkness, a city built by species, who had forgotten they were once human. But inside their small room, 3 people from Earth began planning how to remind the galaxy of its true heritage. Emma Stone worked through the night, her tablet glowing in the darkness of their guest quarters. The archaeological data from Earth painted a picture that made her hands shake as she cross-referenced it with the precursor sites throughout the galaxy. Every calculation pointed to the same impossible conclusion. The quantum communication array in their room chirped softly. Another data packet from Earth had arrived, this one containing detailed genetic analysis from archaeological sites across 6 continents. Emma opened the files and felt her breath catch in her throat. "Tom, David, wake up," she whispered urgently. Captain Miller was instantly alert, trained reflexes bringing him to full awareness. David took a moment longer, rubbing sleep from his eyes as he sat up on his narrow bed. "What is it?" David asked. Emma projected the new data into the air above them. "I've been running comparisons all night. The genetic samples from our oldest Earth sites don't just share markers with modern humans. They share markers with the Confederation species." Tom frowned at the floating genetic charts. "What do you mean?" "Look at this." Emma highlighted sections of the data. DNA recovered from 50,000-year-old human remains in Turkey contains genetic sequences that match Altarian biology. Samples from Peru show markers consistent with crystalline physiology. The Antarctic finds have genetic patterns similar to the archive species. David stared at the evidence. "You're saying ancient humans had alien DNA?" "No," Emma replied, her voice growing stronger with conviction. "I'm saying the aliens have human DNA. They evolved from human colonists who were stranded on different worlds 50,000 years ago." She pulled up more data, showing how environmental pressures on different worlds could drive rapid evolutionary changes. Look at the Altarians. They evolved on a high-gravity world with intense radiation. 4 arms for better manipulation, scaled skin for protection, but their base genetic structure is fundamentally human. Tom studied the projections. The crystalline species? Their world has extreme electromagnetic fields. Over thousands of generations, humans exposed to that environment could develop crystalline structures in their bodies for protection. Eventually, they became living crystals themselves, but the core DNA patterns remain. David was fully awake, now pacing the small room. This is incredible, but we need more proof. Genetic similarities could be coincidence. Emma smiled and opened another file. I thought you'd say that. So I spent the last 6 hours mapping every known precursor site in the galaxy and comparing them to human migration patterns on Earth. A 3-dimensional map of the galaxy appeared, with Earth at the center of a spiral pattern extending outward through dozens of star systems. Each point on the pattern corresponded to a world where precursor artifacts had been found. This isn't random expansion, Emma explained. It's systematic colonization following the most efficient routes to habitable worlds, and every single route can be traced back to Earth. Tom manipulated the projection, zooming in on different sectors. The Confederation species' homeworlds are all along these routes. Exactly. Humans didn't just visit these worlds 50,000 years ago. They stayed, adapted, and became the ancestors of every species in the Confederation. A soft chime from David's communication device interrupted them. "Ambassador Reed," came a voice through the translator. "Consul Thane requests your presence. In the council chambers, there has been a development." David looked at his companions. "It's 3 in the morning local time. What kind of development?" 20 minutes later, they found themselves in a smaller chamber deep within the Confederation complex. Consul Thane stood before a massive display screen showing star charts and archaeological data. His 4 arms gestured animatedly as he spoke, with other Confederation leaders through holographic communication. "Ah, humans," Thane said, his voice tight with what might have been anxiety. "We have discovered something disturbing. It appears your presence here has triggered automated systems we did not know existed." Elder Lux's crystalline form sang a complex harmony of concern. "Ancient precursor sites across 17 worlds have suddenly become active. Sealed chambers are opening, displaying information we cannot read." Prime Vel's skin showed rapid pattern, changes indicating extreme agitation. "The timing cannot be coincidental. These systems have remained dormant for 50,000 years, and they activate the moment humans arrive at Centrum Prime." Emma stepped forward, trying to keep her voice steady. "What kind of information?" Thane manipulated the display, showing images from multiple worlds, ancient chambers filled with star charts, genetic data, and most prominently, those familiar symbols that Emma now knew were actually human writing. "The symbols are everywhere," Thane continued. "But more disturbing are these." The display shifted to show biological charts and genetic sequences. They appear to be showing evolutionary pathways, maps of how different species developed from common sources. Tom exchanged glances with Emma. The ancient systems weren't just revealing human presence in the galaxy. They were showing the truth about the Confederation species' origins. "Have you been able to translate any of it?" David asked. "That is why we called you," Elder Lux sang. "The linguistic patterns in these new revelations bear striking similarities to your human languages. We need your help to understand what the precursors were trying to tell us." Emma felt a moment of vertigo. The Confederation was asking humanity to help translate their own ancient records. Records that would prove the primitive newcomers were actually the ancestors of every species in the room. "I'd be happy to help," she said carefully, "but I'll need access to the original sites, not just images." Thane's expression suggested reluctance. That would be highly irregular. These sites are among our most sacred archaeological treasures. I understand, Emma replied. But if you want answers, I need to examine the actual artifacts and inscriptions. Prime Vel's patterns shifted to show calculation. There is one site here on Centrum Prime, a chamber beneath the Capitol building that was recently unsealed. It contains the most complete collection of new revelations. Perfect, Emma said, her heart racing. A precursor site right here in the Capitol, recently opened and filled with human records. However, Thane added, access is restricted to Confederation, archaeologists, and senior officials. As junior members, humans would not normally be permitted. David straightened his shoulders. Perhaps we could make an exception, given the unique circumstances. Consul Thane considered this for a long moment. Very well. Tomorrow, during the day shift when proper supervision is available, Dr. Stone may examine the chamber, but she will be accompanied by Confederation security and may not remove any artifacts. After they were dismissed and returned to their quarters, Emma could barely contain her excitement. Don't you see, she said to her companions, that chamber isn't just a precursor site, it's a human time capsule designed to be opened when humans return to the galaxy. The automated systems activated because they recognized us. Tom nodded, slowly. The question is, what are we going to find down there? Emma stared out the window at the alien city beyond. The truth, the real history of humanity and every species in this confederation. And maybe, just maybe, an explanation for what happened 50,000 years ago that forced our ancestors to abandon the galaxy. David sat heavily in his chair. And when we find that truth, everything changes. The Confederation won't be a collection of ancient civilizations graciously accepting primitive humans. It'll be a family reunion 50,000 years in the making. Emma smiled grimly. Then we better make sure we're ready for that reunion, because tomorrow we're going to prove that humanity isn't the newcomer to the galaxy. We're the ones who've been away from home for far too long. The hidden chamber lay 30 meters beneath the Confederation's Capitol building, accessible only through a maintenance tunnel that most officials had forgotten existed. Emma Stone crawled through the narrow passage, her archaeological equipment scraping against the metal walls, while Tom Miller followed close behind with a small scanning device. They weren't supposed to be here. The official examination had been scheduled for the following morning, with full Confederation supervision. But Emma couldn't wait. The automated systems that had activated across 17 worlds were sending increasingly complex signals, and she suspected they were running out of time before the Confederation imposed greater restrictions on human access. Are you sure about this? Tom whispered as they approached the chamber entrance. The diplomatic reception upstairs will keep everyone busy for hours, Emma replied. This is our only chance to see what's really down here without alien supervision. The chamber door stood open, revealing a space that took Emma's breath away. The walls were covered floor to ceiling with inscriptions in ancient human languages. Star charts showed the galaxy as it had been 50,000 years ago. And in the center of the room sat a crystalline device that pulsed with soft blue light. Emma activated her recording equipment and began documenting everything. The inscriptions weren't just random messages from the past. They told a story. Tom, listen to this, she said, translating as she read. We are the children of Earth, spread across the stars in the great expansion. We have built cities on 100 worlds and raised new generations who know only the light of distant suns. She moved to another section of wall. But the home star grows angry. Solar storms unlike any in recorded history threaten to sterilize every world in the inner systems. The colonies must choose, evacuate to the outer rim or return to Earth and wait for the storms to pass. Tom scanned the crystalline device in the center of the room. Emma, this thing is still active. It's been running for 50,000 years, waiting for something. Emma approached the device carefully. Its surface showed symbols that shifted and changed as she watched. It's some kind of beacon, and I think it's been waiting for humans to return. She placed her hand on the device's surface. Immediately, the inscriptions on the walls began to glow, and the device projected a holographic display that filled the chamber. Star maps, genetic charts, and most importantly, historical records that explained everything. The Great Return, Emma read from the floating text. As the solar storms intensified, most colonies chose to evacuate their populations back to Earth. The mother world would shelter her children until the danger passed. But some colonies were too distant, their ships too slow. They remained behind, promising to preserve human civilization until the storms ended and expansion could resume. The display shifted to show what happened next. The storms lasted longer than predicted. Communication with Earth was lost. The stranded colonies, isolated and adapting to their new worlds, gradually forgot their origins. Within a few thousand years, they believed they were native species who had evolved independently. Tom studied the genetic charts floating around them. These show the evolutionary pathways, how humans on different worlds adapted to local conditions. Emma nodded, translating more text. The Altarians developed on a high-gravity world with dangerous radiation. Their 4 arms and scaled skin were adaptations for survival. The crystalline species lived on a world with intense electromagnetic fields. Over generations, their bodies incorporated mineral structures for protection. And the archive species? Tom asked. Their world had toxic atmospheres that required sophisticated filtration systems. They developed advanced neural processing to manage complex chemical analysis. Eventually, their skin evolved to display information directly. The holographic display changed again, showing more recent events. The beacon has been monitoring galactic communications for centuries, waiting for signs that Earth had recovered and developed space travel again. When human ships first left the solar system, it began activating similar devices on other worlds. Emma stared at the implications. Every precursor site that opened when we arrived at Centrum Prime. They're all connected to this network, all sending the same message. Tom's scanner beeped urgently. Emma, we have a problem. This device isn't just recording history, it's actively transmitting to every Confederation world simultaneously. As if summoned by his words, voices echoed from the tunnel entrance. Confederation security forces were approaching, having detected the unauthorized activation of the ancient systems. Dr. Stone, Captain Miller, came Consul Thane's voice, tight with anger. You will exit the chamber immediately. Emma grabbed her recording equipment and backed toward the crystalline device. Tom, can you download the data from this thing? Already on it, he replied, connecting his scanner to the device's interface. But I need another minute. The security forces entered the chamber, their weapons drawn but not aimed. Consul Thane followed, his 4 arms gesturing in what was clearly extreme agitation. What have you done? He demanded. The entire Confederation is in chaos. Every world is reporting precursor sites, broadcasting signals we cannot understand. Emma straightened, meeting his gaze directly. They're not precursor sites, Consul. They're human sites, and the signals aren't random. They're telling your people the truth about their origins. Thane's scaled face showed disbelief. Impossible. Humans are newcomers to the galaxy. No, Emma replied firmly. Humans are the original species. Every civilization in your confederation evolved from human colonists who were stranded 50,000 years ago. Elder Lux materialized in the chamber, her crystalline form singing complex harmonies of distress. The signals are causing widespread confusion. Our people are demanding explanations we cannot provide. Tom's scanner completed its download. Got it, he announced, disconnecting from the device. Emma activated her own recording equipment, projecting the translated historical records for everyone to see. 50,000 years ago, humanity faced a solar catastrophe. Most colonies evacuated their populations back to Earth, but some were too distant to evacuate. They stayed behind and adapted to their new worlds over thousands of generations. The holographic display showed the evolutionary pathways again, demonstrating how humans on different worlds had developed into the current Confederation species. The Altarians, the crystalline worlds, the archive species, Emma continued. You're all human. You're all our children who were separated from Earth by a cosmic disaster. Consul Thane stared at the genetic evidence floating before him. His scaled hands trembled as he accessed his personal datapad and compared his own genetic profile to the ancient human templates. The match was unmistakable. This cannot be, he whispered. Prime Vel appeared via holographic communication, his skin displaying patterns of extreme disturbance. Consul, we are receiving similar revelations from 17 different worlds. The evidence is consistent across all sites. Elder Lux's song became a complex harmony of recognition and wonder. I feel it, she sang. Something familiar in these patterns, as if I have always known but forgotten. Emma stepped forward, her voice gentle now. You haven't forgotten completely. That's why the Confederation exists. Deep down, every species recognized something familiar in the others. You were drawn together because you're family. Thane looked around the chamber, seeing the inscriptions, with new understanding. If this is true, if we are truly descendants of your species, then humanity isn't joining the Confederation as junior members, Tom finished. We're coming home to our children. The chamber fell silent, except for the soft humming of the crystalline device. Throughout the galaxy, similar scenes were playing out as ancient human time capsules revealed their secrets to species who had forgotten their true heritage. Finally, Consul Thane spoke, his voice carrying a weight of realization that would reshape galactic civilization. We must call an emergency session of the full Confederation Council. If humanity truly is our parent species, then every relationship, every treaty, every assumption about galactic history must be reconsidered. Emma nodded, looking around at the faces of beings who were no longer aliens, but distant relatives discovering their family tree. Yes, it's time for the galaxy to remember where it came from. And it's time for humanity to come home. The Great Assembly Hall of Centrum Prime had never hosted such a gathering. Representatives from every Confederation world filled the massive chamber, their voices creating a symphony of confusion, anger, and wonder that echoed off the crystalline walls. 3 days had passed since the revelation in the underground chamber, and the galaxy was still reeling from the truth. Dr. Emma Stone stood at the center of the hall, surrounded by holographic displays showing genetic evidence, archaeological findings, and the translated records from dozens of ancient human sites. The proof was overwhelming, but acceptance was proving more difficult than discovery. This is preposterous, declared Senator Corex of the warrior clans, his reptilian features twisted in denial. My people have ruled the Iron Worlds for 30,000 years. We are not descended from these soft mammals. Elder Lux sang a complex harmony from her position on the High Council platform. Yet the genetic evidence cannot be disputed. My own crystalline matrix contains the fundamental patterns of human DNA adapted over millennia for survival in electromagnetic fields. Consul Thane raised his forearms for silence. The past 3 days had aged him visibly as he struggled with the implications of humanity's true identity. The evidence speaks for itself. Every Confederation species shares common genetic markers with Earth humans. Our mythologies speak of coming from the stars, of a great journey that ended when we found our destined worlds. Captain Tom Miller stepped forward, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had seen the proof firsthand. The ancient sites aren't just telling us about human expansion. They're showing us how your ancestors prepared for survival on hostile worlds. They knew they might be stranded for thousands of years, so they included adaptation protocols in their genetic structure. A representative from the gas giant colonies, her biosuit allowing her to exist in normal atmosphere, spoke through her. Translator: "You claim our ancestors modified their own genetics to survive different environments?" Emma nodded, highlighting sections of the holographic display. "Look at these records from the archive sites. Your ancestors were incredibly advanced. They could modify human DNA to enhance survival traits for specific worlds. High gravity, toxic. Atmosphere, extreme temperatures, intense radiation. They prepared for everything." "But why?" asked Prime Vel, his skin displaying patterns of deep confusion. "Why abandon such advanced technology and forget their origins?" Emma pulled up the final section of the historical records. "Because they were told to forget. The evacuation protocols included memory suppression techniques to help stranded colonists adapt psychologically to their new homes. If they remembered Earth and the other colonies, they might spend generations trying to return instead of building new civilizations. The chamber erupted in discussions as representatives absorbed this information. The revelation that their ancestors had deliberately chosen to forget their human heritage was perhaps more shocking than discovering the heritage itself. David Reed, who had remained silent through most of the session, finally spoke. "The important question isn't what happened 50,000 years ago, it's what happens now." Consul Thane turned to face the human ambassador. "What do you mean?" "The Confederation was built on the assumption that humans were primitive newcomers, worthy only of junior membership. Now we know that every species here is human, just adapted for different worlds. The entire power structure of the galaxy needs to be reconsidered." Senator Korex slammed his clawed fist against his chair. "You expect us to simply hand over control of civilizations we have built for millennia?" "No," Emma interjected. "We're not here to conquer or control anything. We're here to reunite a family that was separated by cosmic disaster." The chamber quieted as her words sank in. Emma continued, her voice growing stronger. "Earth's humans also forgot our galactic heritage until recently. Our archaeological discoveries only began revealing the truth in the last few centuries. We're all children of the same expansion, whether we stayed on Earth or adapted to distant worlds." Elder Lux's song shifted to harmonies of recognition. "The ancient songs my people have preserved for millennia speak of a great forgetting and a promised return. We dismissed them as mythology." Prime Vel's skin displayed what looked like ancient star charts. "Our oldest archives contain navigation data that made no sense because it referenced star positions from 50,000 years ago. We thought it was corrupted data." "All of our species have preserved fragments of the truth," Tom observed. "Buried in mythology, cultural practices, even genetic memory. The Confederation exists because deep down, every species recognized something familiar in the others." A new voice spoke from the assembly floor. Representative Maya of the Ocean Worlds had remained silent throughout the proceedings, but now she stood with obvious emotion. "Our creation myths tell of emerging from great waters that fell from the sky. We always assumed it meant our evolution from primitive sea life. But what if it meant something else?" Emma accessed her database and projected information about the Ocean World colonies. "Your ancestors were terraforming specialists. They were sent to water-rich worlds to establish aquatic cities. The great waters from the sky weren't mythology. They were the oceans your ancestors brought with them from Earth." Maya's bio-adapted features showed wonder. "Then the sacred sites beneath our deepest cities are probably human installations." "From the original colony ships," Emma confirmed, "designed to activate when Earth humans return to the galaxy." Consul Thane stood slowly, his scaled face showing a mixture of awe and resignation. "If this is all true, if we are truly one species separated by time and adaptation, then the Confederation as we know it cannot continue." Concerned murmurs rippled through the assembly. Senator Corax voiced what many were thinking. You speak of dissolving our civilization? No, David replied. We speak of evolving it. The Confederation was built on the idea of separate species cooperating despite their differences. But we're not separate species. We're one family that adapted to different worlds. Elder Lux sang a beautiful, complex harmony that needed no translation. Every being in the chamber felt its meaning, recognition, homecoming, and hope. The crystalline archive contains prophecies of the Great Reunion, she sang. When the scattered, children would recognize each other and become whole again. We thought it referred to death and spiritual transcendence. Perhaps it meant something far more literal. Emma activated the final portion of her presentation. The ancient beacon network isn't just revealing historical truth. It's activating dormant technologies throughout the galaxy. Terraforming systems, manufacturing facilities, transportation networks, all designed to support a reunified human civilization spanning the stars. The holographic display showed systems coming online across Confederation space. Worlds that had struggled with environmental problems for centuries suddenly found their atmospheric processors working again. Star systems that had been considered uninhabitable were revealing hidden colonies in perfect preservation. Our ancestors prepared for this reunion, Tom explained. They built the Confederation species with the genetic potential to work together, and they left technology that would activate when all the children came home. Prime Vel's skin showed patterns of calculation and wonder. The efficiency improvements we're seeing across all our system, they're not random. The ancient technology is integrating with our current infrastructure, making us stronger together than we ever were apart, Emma added. Consul Thane looked around the chamber at representatives from dozens of worlds, seeing them with new eyes. If we proceed with this reunification, what would it mean for our individual cultures and civilizations? David stepped forward. It means celebrating diversity instead of merely tolerating it. Every adaptation your species made, every culture you developed, every advancement you achieved, it's all part of humanity's success story. Earth's humans aren't trying to replace what you've built. We're trying to add our piece to a puzzle that's been incomplete for 50,000 years. The chamber fell silent as the representatives considered the magnitude of what was being proposed. Finally, a young delegate from the frontier worlds stood up. I have a question for the humans from Earth, she said. If we accept this reunification, what happens to the Confederation's policy toward primitive species? There are dozens of worlds with developing civilizations who have not yet achieved space travel. Emma smiled. We help them, the same way we hope you'll help us, not as superior beings granting membership to inferiors, but as family members sharing knowledge and support. Some of those primitive worlds might be lost human colonies that never developed space travel. Others might be truly independent species who deserve respect and assistance as they develop. Elder Lux's song became jubilant. A galaxy united not by conquest or commerce, but by kinship and mutual support. Senator Corax, who had been the most resistant to the revelations, stood slowly. I have fought in wars to defend my peoples. Independence! I have seen civilizations rise and fall, but I have never seen anything like the evidence presented here. He paused, looking around the chamber. If the warrior clans are truly descendants of Earth's humans, then our greatest victory would be to help reunite the family we thought we had lost. The vote, when it came, was not unanimous. Some species chose to remain independent, needing more time to process the revelations. But the majority voted to transform the Galactic Confederation into something new, the Terran Reunion, a family of human-descended civilizations working together to explore the galaxy and support developing worlds. Months later, Captain Tom Miller stood on the observation deck of the newly commissioned starship Homecoming, watching as human ships from Earth worked alongside Altarian constructors, crystalline engineers, and archive researchers to build humanity's first joint colony in 50,000 years. The world below them had been uninhabitable for millennia, but ancient terraforming systems had awakened and were slowly restoring its atmosphere. Dr. Emma Stone joined him at the viewing port, carrying a datapad filled with reports from archaeological teams across the galaxy. 17 more sites have activated this week, she announced, including what looks like a massive library complex in the galactic core. David Reed approached from the ship's communication center. I just received word from Earth. The Global Council has approved the establishment of the Terran Embassy here on Centrum Prime. They're sending our best diplomats to help coordinate the reunification efforts. Tom nodded, still watching the work below. It's strange, isn't it? A few months ago, we thought we were alone in the universe. Now we discover we have family scattered across the galaxy. Emma laughed softly. The universe got a lot smaller and a lot more welcoming all at once. Below them, beings from dozens of worlds worked side by side, no longer aliens cooperating despite their differences, but relatives rebuilding what their ancestors had been forced to abandon. The galaxy that had seemed so vast and foreign now felt like home, because it had always been home. Humanity had simply forgotten the way back to its children among the stars.